to The Changing Stage, music gear talk from the manufacturers and musicians who define the biz. Here's your host, Florentino Buenaventura.
Welcome to another episode of The Changing Stage on EnterTalk Media. My name is Florentino, and I am here with an amazing guest again. We had an earlier interview with Ian Mitchell, his partner in crime, as he's on tour right now. But we are going to be speaking with Steve Postell, and Steve has been a long-time musician, songwriter, guitarist, you name it. This man has done it, and he's played with everybody. Steve, welcome to The Changing Stage show.
Great to be here.
Awesome, sir. Hey, I just wanted to congratulate you on this tour that you've been going on, and all the great cities and stops. I've heard nothing but positive reviews from the shows. You've had great turnouts and just a lot of excited attendees.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing with Ian, and it's only our, I guess, our third little tour, and it gets better all the time.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. So, let's kind of start off with what's going on right now. You've played a number of dates. You have just a few left, or maybe even one left.
I think one.
Yeah, one left. I guess yesterday was the other date. So I know that when I talked to Ian, it was a couple of dates. Where are you going to be playing at this last venue?
It's in Ojai, and I'd have to tell you what they're calling the venue. I'll find it before we finish. But it's a nice concert series that's going on up there.
Nice.
And yeah.
Well, that's awesome. How many dates have you guys done so far?
This was small. It's about eight shows.
8 shows. All right. Yeah, and. You were brought to us by Lori Reimer. I want to give a shout out to Lori, and special thanks to her for helping connect us to you.
It's called by the way, it's the Ojai Underground Exchange. That's what it's called. Awesome.
And that's going to be tomorrow, right?
No, it's next Sunday.
Next Sunday. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm getting my dates wrong from when I spoke with Ian. So forgive me on that one. Does this look like something that you guys are going to be doing on a semi-regular basis? I know that you guys have your own project and you're doing a number of different things, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, yes. I mean, if Ian didn't live in Europe, we would do it more.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So it's logistically. I mean, I'm going to start working in Europe myself, and I'll connect with him there. And so certainly once a year, and possibly more. But it's really just a very organic connection, and we've started writing together. We're going to do a little recording this week. So it's a slow maturing project because of the logistics of really just the geography. But I don't see any reason to stop doing it. It works really well.
No, I definitely, again, I have not been fortunate enough to check out the show, but maybe the next time you guys come back around, won't be in Ojai next Sunday. But, with that said, let's kind of talk, let's kind of go back a little bit. Let's talk about when you got started here. You've played with some amazing players. Steve Ferrone brought you out to California, from what I understand, and he's with Clapton and Petty and Average Right Band, and
well, it wasn't exactly that he brought me out. What happened there was that I had met Steve a number of actually I first met him many years ago on stage. He wouldn't remember, at the China Club and at a big jam in New York City. I mean, 25 years ago or something. But and I wanted to produce a couple songs for this singer named Suzanne Paris, who we both knew. And I just called him and I said, hey, I'm coming out to L.A., I want to produce a couple songs for our friend, and why don't I use your studio? And that way, he had a nice studio in Burbank. And so we went there, and I produced 3 tunes, I believe, 2 or 3 tunes with Suzanne.
Awesome.
And I did note that he had bought this building. It was a really nice studio, and there was a one of the rooms was basically full of empty boxes, and I was living in Colorado at the time, and I got home and I thought about it, and I said, it might be time. And I called him up and I said, so what are you doing with that room that's full of boxes? And he said, I thought you'd never ask. And, literally a month later, I was moved all my equipment, put it in a truck, brought it out, cleared out that room, and John and Steve and a wonderful engineer producer, writer named John Jones, and I, the three of us, had this studio going called Drumrolll Recording. We did that for 4 years, and so I hit the ground running. I got to LA, and within 2 days. A lot of times it can be very difficult for people coming to LA. It's a big town, it's all spread out, and it takes a while to get your feet on the ground. But for me, it happened very quickly.
Wow, that's awesome. What year was that, man?
2004.
2004. Okay, very cool. And you've done a lot of very cool things working with the likes of David Crosby and so many others. In fact, you featured a number of these folks on your latest CD. Tell us a little bit about your personal solo project and some of the people that performed on that with you.
The record that I just finished, which so far it was released in Japan, and then in early 2020 it'll be released in Europe and here. I've always had, because I'm also a studio player, I just know so many musicians, and it's always just makes sense to invite certain people to play on the records. And over the years, I've had David Crosby on a couple, and Jennifer Warnes, who I worked with for a long time, sang, and John Oates, and Robben Ford, and Eric Johnson, and David Kaz, and so it's always more about. I look at each song as sort of an orchestration in a way, and what would be the very best sound I could get. It was one song on this new record, and I just heard a certain voice, and it's this woman named Becca Bramlett, who's Bonnie's daughter. It was, and I knew her, and I called her, and so she sang on that song. But it wasn't, I got to get Becca. It was, I hear a certain sound, and then I thought, who sings like that? And she was the answer. So
yeah, so you're definitely an artist, and you're really looking to bring the most out of a song. That's kind of was a long-standing way to look at a music career, but it's definitely changed a lot since then. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I commend you on that. Some of the artists that you've worked with obviously have been doing this for quite some time. Did you ever have a moment where you kind of fanboyed out, where you played with somebody and go, wow, I can't believe chopping it up with this gentleman or this lady?
No, it happens all the time. I mean, right now I'm in a band called The Immediate Family with four of the guys that were real, really musical heroes of mine that I only could imagine when I was younger. I mean, I first saw them playing when I was 15, and it's myself and Waddy Wachtel and Danny Korchmar and Leland Sklar and Russ Kunkel, and literally every time we play a gig, and we're going into Jackson Brown's studio a week from today to start our next record. But so I mean, I always look around, and I really did from the first time I saw those guys, which was first time I saw Waddy he was with Linda Ronstadt, and the first time I saw the other three was with James, and it was just that was just a fantasy that I get to be in that group of people. But so every day that I'm working with them, I kind of feel that way. And of course, playing with Crosby is I mean, when you're actually in the music, you're just in the music. But occasionally I'll just go, wow, this is pretty, pretty cool.
Yeah. How did this guy get there? Yeah, I totally feel that. We definitely get that when we were talking to amazing players like yourself. We've had Russ on, and we've had Leland, and we definitely can appreciate the artistry that these guys bring to the table, and you definitely are right there with them. So, how did that project come about? How did I know these guys play a lot together. Well, they actually hadn't been playing a lot together, but they have played together for 50 years in different configurations. But basically, what happened was
So Danny, I met Danny. I guess we have half an hour to tell you the whole story. I made my last record, and it had a lot of great artists on it, and Leland was on that one, actually. And the guy who mixed it was named Nathaniel Kunkel, and that's Russ's son.
Yeah.
And Nathaniel invited me to the Troubadour, because he was doing a live recording of the Troubadour reunion, which was Carole King, James Taylor, Russ, Lee, and Danny, which was the original band that played in the Troubadour. So I went to the show, and I met Danny, and we just struck up a conversation and a quick friendship. And then I'd see him when he came out to L.A., and then eventually he was thinking about coming back here after he was living in Connecticut. And I said, look, I have this studio. There's a lot going on. Let's do some stuff. And I had this band. I still have it, but I just did one last week. It's called the Night Train Music Club, and that was essentially myself and some kind of hodgepodge of amazing players that I would put together, once a month, and we do some fun show. We did one in Santa Barbara last week.
Yeah.
And Danny started playing with the Night Train, and he would do sometimes the whole night, or sometimes just some of his hits, and then I would always have 3 or 4 different guests. Anyway, he got an offer to put the section back together and go to Japan. And the section, for those of you who don't know, was Danny, Russ, Lee, and Craig Derby, keyboard player, who played with James all those years ago.
Yeah.
And they did three instrumental kind of fusion-y records, which a Japanese company was going to re-release. Long story short, they just couldn't get the timing of all the players, and weren't sure it was the right thing to do. So Danny was in my studio. He said, yeah, I'm going to turn that down. It's not really working out. And I said, well, why don't we just do what we've been doing, call it Danny Korchmar and Friends, and go to Japan? And he asked them, and they were totally into it. We went with a different band, but and while we were there, a Japanese label approached Danny about doing a record, a Danny Korchmar record of all his, where he would redo a lot of his hit songs, which he's written hit songs for Don Henley and Jackson Browne and James Taylor and so on and so forth. So when he got the record deal, we went into Groove Masters, which is Jackson's studio, and he said, I want to play this with my best friends, and I want it to be Leland, Russ, Waddy. We did, and we had Jim Cox, keyboard player, myself. And basically we just had such an amazing time making that record, and the Japanese label said, we would like you guys to tour here, and it was an instant, like, yes, this is, finally these guys get to be in their own band after 50 years, and I get to be part of it, and let's do it. That's how it happened.
That's pretty freaking awesome, man. Yeah. Great guys. I did a video project with Russ, probably a couple of years ago. DW, he came out and did a clinic, and he played some of the tracks that Jackson Browne's son had mixed for that particular event, which was pretty cool. So,
no, it was Russ's son.
Was it Russ's son that mixed it?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It was Nathaniel Kunkel.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So for some reason I was thinking it was Jackson Browne's, but yeah, I think you're right. It was it was a little while back. Yeah. So, well, that is pretty dang awesome, man. So, do you find because you guys do a number of different styles? Do you find there's any one style that really, you gravitate towards, or this, amalgamation of different flavors that you've done from, like you said, fusion to straight head rock and roll to,
Well, that
particular
particular band is definitely a rock and roll band. I mean, we are committed to, it's not a folk band. It's a rock and roll band. And even the versions of the songs that we do, Somebody's Baby, or even New York Minute, the songs that Danny wrote, we do them as a rock band. I guess you could, the way the Heartbreakers were a rock band.
Yeah.
Very committed to that. That's why we ended up deciding not to have a keyboard player. It's just 3 guitars, bass, and drums, and it works out really nicely.
No.
And I do other things. When I play with Ian, that's an acoustic, very acoustic, more Celtic folk bluesy thing, and so different situations call for different sides of your musical personality.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I was referring to, that you have so many different sides. Is there one that really kind of you find yourself really moving towards, or do you kind of have like you said, within a situation or in a project, you find that you're passionate about that flavor when you're in that project?
I mean, it's a lot of my time now is spent with the immediate family, and then my own music is not much more, but it's a little bit more acoustic, more sort of the Tom Petty-ish kind of thing. But a couple of years ago I wrote a classical ballet, which they're going to get ready to perform again. So I don't do that a lot, but when I was writing it, I loved it, and I just scored a couple years ago a movie about Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, and for that score I had to do a lot of styles of music in that one score because it spanned 50 years of their lives. So whatever I'm doing, I sink my teeth into. I say my time is mostly, most of it is playing those sort of between, from acoustic folk rock to pure, full-on rock and roll.
Yeah, I definitely can hear that from you. And are there any moments that really kind of stand out to you when you've played? Is there any crazy experiences on stage, or just super emotional studio moments that you'd like to share?
When you've done this as long as I have, it's such a litany of every kind of experience, good and bad, that you could have.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I could really. I have anecdotes from all different eras. I played Broadway shows. I've done movie scores, television, commercial. Back in the '80s, I did Jingles. It really adds up to quite a lot of history when you've done as long as I have.
Yeah, I definitely. And looking at your bio, I'm of Filipino heritage, so I noticed that you were music director for Lea Salonga, and she's been a long time, national, icon for the folks in the Philippines, and one of my favorites, Corey Glover from Living Color. So I know you're doing some Broadway type of stuff.
Yeah, and that was a blast. That when I worked with her, actually, she got signed to Atlantic. They wanted her to be sort of a pop star, and
so they took her off. They were trying to take her off Broadway then.
Yes, that was the idea. Yeah, that was like a Celine Dion maybe kind of thing. So I don't remember who produced the record. It might have been David Foster, or maybe he just played on it. It was a big pop record, and I got called to be her musical director, and she was. Is still just an unbelievable talent, just a natural. And so we ended up, it was going to be, it's funny, this is a funny story actually. So she had a single out with a young male singer. It was a duet, and I can't remember, of course, who it was, and it's better if I don't because of the story.
Yeah.
And we played a couple. So he was going to go on. We were doing a promotional tour, which was going to be all the TV shows around the country. Not all of them, but in the big markets. And they were going to sing this duet, and we did the Today Show. And I remember that Katie Couric, when she interviewed them, a lot of times interviewers, they know the answer to something, but they ask the question anyway just to get you talking about it. And she asked the young guy, So what are you working on right now? And he was starring in a Broadway show. So he said, yeah, I'm in this Broadway show, and blah, blah, blah. So we go back, and his mother, who was his manager, went just nuts on the Lea's manager who put the whole tour together about, I can't believe you didn't tell Katie Couric what he was doing, and that's not, and she just was laying into the guy. And he's very calm. He was an old school music biz guy. And he turns to me. He says, hang on one second. She's yelling at him. He goes, Steve. And he knew this. He knew me for years. He goes, you sing, right? I go, yeah. He looks at her and goes, you're fired. Steve, you sing the duet from now on. So for the rest of the tour, including on The Tonight Show and all over, I sang the duet with Lea. So.
It's rock and roll, man. It is definitely a crazy world.
Oh, my God. It really is.
Yeah, it definitely is, man. And I know that life is definitely a bit different now. How are you liking this current climate of music and the music industry? There's some good points in my opinion, and there's some not so good points. But give me your take on it, man.
Well, I'll try to keep this short because it's a big question, really.
Yeah, it really is. But, we'll have fun with it.
There are good things about it, for sure. I think that taking all the power out of the hands of 5 labels, or 4, is not a bad thing.
Is it 4 now, or is it 3 now?
No, I'm saying back in the day.
Oh yeah.
That was it. The powers, and now that's not, unless you're going to follow in Taylor Swift's footsteps or something. It's not really a factor. I think that the fact that it's a more level playing field in terms of access, and everybody can put stuff online, and I think that having not having to have $250,000 if you wanted to make a record, you could make it in your living room. But all that stuff has made for a very sort of fertile, creative period. The side that's difficult, I think, there's 2 things. One is it's definitely harder for a young artist to make a living.
Yeah.
It was, if you were any good at all when I came up, you were gonna, you could, even if you just played in a band, you could play every night. You made the same thing in the 70s as they pay bands now, if not more.
Yeah.
And it was across the river. My apartment when it was $160 a month in Manhattan. And we making
that's crazy talk right there. $160 a month.
Yeah, we were still getting $90 or something to play at a club, and we played 5 nights a week. And then there was in the daytime I did Jingles, and there was just if you could play and you could do stuff, there was always somewhere where you could work, and that's very difficult because for the young people they don't have access to it. And one of the ways you get good is it's a cliche at this point, but is Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of time.
Yeah,
We all got to put that time in. We played every night, and all day. And we had my rehearsal studio for my first band was in a really big, great studio in a building called the Music Building in the West 30s in New York, full of musicians. It was $300 a month. So the three of us were the main guys in the band, $100 a month, and we had this awesome place to practice. And if we didn't have a gig, we were practicing. So I just think the sheer time that we got to hone our craft. Like the Beatles they played 7 hours a night. That's how they got good.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit. What I find is that there's a little bit of a sterile. The kids are very talented, facile because they have YouTube. They can learn anything, but the kind of deep heart of it, which came from schlepping your gear around and playing in these clubs and being in the real world with it, some of that's missing. That's another part that's difficult.
Yeah, I feel the same way, man. I think that technically there's a lot of great talents out there. But when it comes down to being heartfelt and being, what we came up as known as musicians, that's kind of getting lost in translation. I kind of look at it.
Well, really, art is a expression of life experience. That's what great art comes from, life experience. And when all of your life experience is, or a lot of it, most of it these days with the kids, is based on something you see on a little screen, it does not translate the same. It doesn't get into your core, and that's something that I think has made a lot of the music kind of sound the same and not have the gravitas to be that the artists did in the past.
Yeah. I mean, that life experience piece is really the key. I could feel that with working with a lot of the young musicians. We do a lot of stuff and work with the school systems like the UCSD system, SDSU. We work with a group called Musicians Club, and we're trying to help bridge that with some of the players that we've been able to be associated with. So it is definitely something that it's been lacking in with these young folks. One of the problems I think is that they are, if you wanted to put it in the terms of basketball, when you're, basketball player, you play on the schoolyard, you go to play in, junior high school, up to college. And then if you're great and you're good, you play in the NBA. Well, these kids are saying, well, I don't need to be in the NBA. All I need to do is do some crazy tricks with the basketball here on the playground, and I can get 1 million likes, and so I'm going to make $1 million doing that. And that's what's in their thought process. And what they don't realize is, no, that doesn't work out. I know a lot of young artists that are making, getting millions of views, and they're still not being able to pay their bills because, that money goes back to the guys who wrote the songs. And usually if they've got millions of views, it's all cover stuff that they're doing. So it's a definite different time for sure. What would you think? We've got about 4 minutes left, and I know, again, this is a big topic, but what kind of things do you think we need to do as the generation that we came from? I'm 53, turning 54. What do we need to do to engage these younger audiences?
Well, I mean, sometimes I get a direct, I have some young guys and women who assist me sometimes, and I try to pass stuff on to them. But, for example, a simple thing that when you watch these shows like The Voice in America, I guarantee you that they don't know what they're singing about. They're not paying attention to the story and the words, most of them. So that you can pass on some stuff. But for me, I do some seminars and some teaching, but I'm just going to make this kind of music, and put integrity to it and do it the way I've always done it. I love it as much as I ever did, and just kind of. That's what I can do is put it out there and feel and keep the integrity. And that's whatever it's, I talked to Jackson, I talked to David Crosby, they feel the exact same way, that this is a thing that we can do. And it doesn't make us special at all. It's just, but it is something, and that's how we translate the art form, and then whatever happens. So I think
I definitely feel that. Well, like I said, it's a big topic, and maybe one of these times when we have a panel, we'd love to have you on because you definitely have great insights in that. So, with 3 minutes left, what's next for Steve? What do you got going as this tour winds down to its last date here? Not the following Sunday. What do you got next?
Well, the immediate family has a lot going on. I don't know if you saw the documentary, The Wrecking Crew.
Oh, yeah.
So the guy who directed that, Tommy Tedesco's son, his next documentary is called The Immediate Family, and he's making a film about with our band as the centerpiece, but really it's about the next phase. He did a movie about the sessions work that was done in the 60s. And then all these guys and everyone since sort of went into a new phase. So they've already interviewed James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt, Carole King and Jackson and Peter Asher, and so then it'll culminate with a concert of ours. They're coming in the studio. We'll go in the studio next week to start our next record, and they're going to film all that. So a lot going on with that. We're doing this Rock Legends cruise with Roger Daltrey and Paul Rogers, Uriah Heep, all these people.
Oh.
So that whole project's keeping me very busy. And then I finished my own record, and that's when the immediate family has to take breaks because Leah's with Phil Collins sometimes, and Waddy's with Stevie Nicks, and Russ is with Lyle Lovett, and so there's all these tours to coordinate around. And what I'll do, and I also, I play with Eric Anderson, I play with Ian. So, and in between, I want to I'll put together my own tours that are just Steve Postell music, and then I produce records, and believe it or not, I still have time in between to produce records, and I have a new one starting in a couple weeks. It's just finishing one by a wonderful artist named Jody Siegel, and then whatever else comes, it's hard to say no when you're an artist. You just keep doing it.
Yeah, just keep it going, man. Well, we appreciate you keeping it going, man. Well, hey, brother, thank you very much for joining us and, fitting us in this tight schedule. I know it's been tough, and, I'm glad we got a chance to chop it up. When that movie comes out, let us know. We helped with the Hired Gun movie with Fran Strine and helping promote that. We did a bunch of interviews where, that led up to the launch of the movie. So we got the hype going. We'll help to get it. I mean, it already had a lot of hype as it was coming out. So love to help out that way if possible. And, and as the next tours and all the other things come about, you're always welcome. Now, you're part of our immediate family. So I appreciate you, brother.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for getting in touch. It's been nice.
All right. Thank you. Well, this has been the Changing Stage show on Intertalk Media. Obviously, we will be back soon for a next episode, so stay tuned.